Okay, so this is our first podcast of the yet-to-be-named trio, maybe foursome, or maybe more.
Foursome?
Amir's foreskin.
Will there be a fourth?
There might be a fourth and a fifth. Well, there's another Chris G that might be involved.
We'll have to provide the, approval for that.
This was all on the prep sheet that I'm sure you reviewed in preparation for this.
There's going to be high standards to be invited to this very, very erudite.
You made it in, I believe. That is the low bar.
I was the low. Yeah, you guys set a low bar.
Okay.
So,
But you needed the
a foil.
So the first thing I want to talk about was, so Amir's in a unique situation because he lives in two cities, but mainly he lives in Boston. But he occasionally will visit New York, kind of.
I'm
A weekender.
a weekender, yes.
Like the Sunday Times.
I'm like a honeymooner. My honeymoon is here in New York, and then I go back to my real life in Boston.
This is your fantasy land.
This is my fantasy land. This is where my friends who enable me to lead a life of
Well, speaking of your friends,
debauchery.
So I want to talk about last night because that was an interesting situation. I thought it was kind of emblematic of your friendships with a lot of people.
How you treat them.
Oh, last night. Okay. You mean the fact that you felt I wasn't corresponding?
Yes, I mean I think the general theme. A lot of people think that you're not the best communicator.
Is this an intervention? Are we? Is this
We
what this
we
is?
dress this up as a podcast.
Is this
but
all?
we're actually-
Is this all like?
You know,
There's a lot of people waiting outside to come in and speak to you.
The funny part is I had no intention of talking about any of this, but I thought it was perfect now that we're doing the podcast.
All right. Well, let's give some background on your issues.
Okay, well, so you get frustrated when people do not respond to text messages you send them.
That is correct.
But there's a double standard.
It depends on what we're calling, how we define double standard.
Well, do you
Go
think
on.
do you think you respond timely to people's text messages if you're not?
No, I agree with the facts of your statement that I do not respond in a timely fashion, but I believe for it to be a double standard, it would mean that I would feel that it was okay for me to do that, and I don't feel okay. I actually feel a little bit of guilt.
You look like you're giving testimony on a witness stand right now.
Well,
Well, I feel like I'm surrounded by lawyers. Is that possible?
Is
that
it-
I'm actually
I mean, I know Doug and I are big
Being
guys,
grilled?
but I mean, I don't know if we
Surrounded.
can surround you. It's
We're
like two of
only-
us.
You see, the problem with a 3-person podcast is that there is the chance that 2 people will gang up on one.
Well, if there was one more person here, they'd probably be ganging up on you as well.
Right, you're probably the fewer number of people is actually better for you.
I
guessing.
agree.
Okay, well, we can come back to your communication issues later on, I think, and
Thank you,
weave
'cause
them in. So the first topic that I just had discussed or suggested, and I think Doug's followed this more than Amir, but there is the European Space Agency this past week did something pretty remarkable, which was land a probe or some sort of
A probe, I think that's what you call it.
human-created device on a comet 300 million miles away,
Right.
Wow.
which is, and the comet travels at like 60,000 miles an hour, is that right? Something like
It's
that?
very fast.
It's very fast.
Faster than Amir has ever traveled.
Right.
So,
That you know of.
that I know of.
And obviously, the surface of the comet, obviously I'm not totally familiar with, I'm thinking it's not all that.
It's all right.
It's about half the size.
Full
of
disclosure:
Central Park.
Chase is not a astrophysicist.
It's
so
not anymore.
That's why he's struggling to.
The comet itself is about half the size of Central Park.
So that's not a very big target, really. I mean, I guess a lot of people underestimate the size of Central Park, right? Because they don't go above like 90th Street.
Right. Right.
But it goes all the way to 125th
I mean,
Street.
it's so maybe I think 2 miles circumference is what I've been reading. It's still a very small target,
Probably rocky.
rocky, low gravity. I believe it was like 100 pounds is 1 pound.
Wow, I
And-
feel like I'm listening to.
Well, the point of this,
ESA is
I don't know. Do you know anything about the story?
Of course, I do.
So what's the big thing about the story?
The big thing is that the
This is
the
called
head of
Blowback.
the operation,
Matt Taylor.
Matt Taylor,
And not the head. One of the scientists.
one of the scientists who actually was the was the face for the spokesperson, I guess, after the successful
One of the
landing.
people they interviewed on the team of scientists.
One of the people they
that
interviewed. I feel like I'm going to be corrected a lot today, just so you all are aware
If you know
of the
topic
pressure
there,
that I'm
you should
under right
check
now.
in on them.
He went on television and said something very inappropriate.
No,
and was
no.
wearing no. He was wearing an inappropriate shirt, but he also said something somewhat of questionable
Did not
taste.
say anything objectional.
Oh, really?
No, the
Unless
next
you don't believe
day.
in science.
sorry,
If you don't
wait.
believe in science.
What
then
did he
yes.
say that was objectionable?
You guys aren't aware of this?
All right, so while Lemire is doing research for the first time on this subject, so the big issue was they had pulled off this amazing scientific feat, and the guy goes on this program and is being interviewed, and he's wearing a shirt that apparently a friend of his who's a tattoo artist had designed,
And a female.
and a female.
A female tattoo artist.
And this shirt depicts all these like very voluptuous women, scantily clad, in like almost like superhero type endeavors of their own, something like that.
Holding guns, wearing leather, bikinis.
So like boobs and machine guns and
Yes.
stuff like that. So
Like Michelle Rodriguez,
Right.
basically, in any movie she's played.
right, exactly. So there's like this entire shirt of Michelle Rodriguez's, but different ethnicities.
Right.
So this caused an uproar,
A shirt storm.
a shirt storm.
Yes.
A short storm. And it caused such a backlash on like social media in particular, including from some women in science. Essentially, the theme was that with attitudes like this, it's no surprise that women are not in science more often,
Right.
and in STEM. And he the next
What?
Do you know what STEM means?
No.
you can look that up too.
You're a doctor.
Like stem cell? Like
No.
like
No. Look up STEM. That's your.
No. First, I wanna enter quote number one
From Matt Taylor.
from Matt Taylor, the where he says, and I quote, he's describing the difficulty of the mission. He said, quote, "She's sexy, but I never said she was easy," end quote. So there was more to his, bumbling.
What was he talking? He was talking about the comet.
He's talking about landing,
Was he talking about the rover or what, or the
yeah,
the thing
landing it
landed?
on there. He said, the whole.
I mean, it sounds like you're reading it.
Okay, look. If we'll get us past this, I will agree with Amir. I was wrong. The guy said something offensive or something to somebody.
Can I just tell you how
The
much I
main
love
thrust
it
of
when
this-
Chase says that he was wrong?
The
Because
main
it's
thrust
so
of this
rare to
story
hear that.
is that he was wearing what some to believe be an inappropriate shirt.
Notice how Doug uses male-infused language to describe this, the main thrust. Women have issues. It's a very penetrating story. I mean, this is all male-centric
It's all
language.
like a phallus centric.
But go on. I mean, for us,
Like
who
this is like
who
the
do have
the
a
sem- like
women's
the seminal
studies
theme.
minor,
You're a women's studies minor?
maybe.
Wow, at UVA?
You haven't noticed?
No, I know you're like very adept at show tunes.
I believe this is going to touch on something else we might talk about, if not this show, later on, is that UVA is having some issues right now with
Yeah.
sexual predators. So I think that might throw you.
Well, I don't know if they have a
women's
problem with the
studies.
sexual predator. I believe that one of their
Rape culture,
fraternities
rape culture.
was ransacked or whatever.
But that
Yeah,
all said, I
yeah.
think that maybe throws into question the validity of your women's studies minor.
Because you went to UVA, which promotes
I
rape
went
culture.
to UVA before rape culture became.
No, according to this Rolling Stone article, the rape culture dates back to the early '80s. It's 30 years of rape culture.
You actually could have started.
You might have,
rape culture. That might have been.
you might have
your-
been the Johnny Appleseed of the rape culture at UVA.
We don't know.
Well, you see, I was there before we called it rape.
Oh,
Okay.
before they define
You know this is going
non-consensual
to be
sex.
public, just in case you ever are in trouble in the future.
You know,
in
I mean-
your Tinder dates.
I'm a big. I abhor the idea of, of forcing yourself a woman.
Okay, so
we have you on record on that one. You're against rape.
I'm anti-rape.
bringing this back to Shirt Storm, how do you feel about the shirt that was worn and
I mean, I
the
haven't.
controversy?
Have you
that
seen a
erupted?
picture of the shirt? I
Yes,
mean, this is.
it's a great. I think it's a great shirt, and you could tell a tattoo artist developed it.
Yeah, I think, and the
has
guy
his
has tattoos.
arm tattoos, yeah.
Right,
Basically,
it's
it's
kind of
a
like
character.
just it's seamless with his arms. It basically just they blend into one another.
I mean, I think it's silly. I think it's on the same line as that really viral YouTube video of the woman who's walking through New York City for 10 hours.
Right.
You guys have
Princess
seen that?
Leia.
You think that's silly too?
Okay. All right. Sorry, I forgot. Chase
You know,
was a women's.
The only
Studies major.
I have to say this is the one thing on that subject, which I didn't even think about talking about that, but we probably should have. Maybe we can do that in the next podcast. One of Tuck and my friends, whose name is Carrie, Carrie, who used to do movies with us. She for a time was actually living in Harlem, and I helped her move out of her place, and she was like staying with us for like a month before she moved to the West Coast. And being up there, I was like, oh, the buildings are really nice. It just looked really nice up there. I was like, oh, seems really not so bad. And the first thing she said to me was, yeah, but when I go running during the morning when I wake up, it's nonstop catcalling, nonstop.
But what do they mean by catcalling? I mean, there's a guy who did a kind of a rant in response to this, saying that a lot of the men were saying, "Hey, good morning," or "Hey, how are you today?" They weren't saying inappropriate things. They were actually greetings.
Yeah, but, I mean, no, some of them were greetings.
Would they say it to other men though? Why specifically to this woman instead of
one
the
of
larger woman that was behind her?
One of this man's arguments was she was wearing. Not that this justifies anything, but she was wearing specific clothing. For example, very tight-fitting jeans.
She was asking for it.
No.
the argument.
Don't put words in my mouth. I didn't
No,
say
that's
she
what
was.
you're saying. This gentleman.
She wasn't. She was wearing clothes that are meant to draw the attention
Right, I
of
believe that's
men.
she's asking for a line of reasoning.
Asking for it is a very she wasn't asking for it. She was allowing. She was
encouraging it.
encouraging it.
She was encouraging it.
Okay.
I mean, she was enabling it. Enabling.
Right.
That doesn't mean she wanted it. Asking for it means she actually was like prodding
Get
them
it.
on.
Right.
She wasn't like actually prodding them on.
But I mean,
But
a lot of them weren't just like good morning. A lot of them were like, hey baby, or you're looking good.
Well, from what we've seen of the 10 minutes of edits.
Right, it was only 2 minutes of edits, right?
2 minutes, correct. 10
Right,
hours.
from
10
10
hours
hours.
of total time.
Supposedly there was more,
Will, but look,
but
having edited things, I think you'll bury the good stuff. You actually put
course,
it out
that's
there.
the
So
best.
this
The
was
best that's out there.
This is the best. If there was better stuff, it would
highlights of the catcall.
Best
Right.
of the worst.
Right, and they even tracked a lot of went back and looked at, because they could tell the neighborhoods, and something like 80% of, and they said this was all over
Took
New York
place
City.
like north of.
Yeah, it's all in the same.
so
It's all in the same area. It's like, it's kind of like it's
North of what? What are you trying to say, Amir?
north of
North of
Mason
Central Park?
Dixie line.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
north of Central Park.
So anyway,
I know you're a women's studies major. I'm just curious, like what.
no, okay. So here's the thing. So
No,
we
I
weren't
don't.
we weren't actually going to talk about that though. So this is in reference
Yeah,
to
we
Shirt
are.
Storm. I mean, I actually think the catcalling thing is more legitimate, because I think women should be able to walk around in a normal place and not have like guys who have no jobs who sit on upside down buckets and outside of liquor stores or whatever and just catcalling them. I mean, I don't think that's, which is like a lot of the stuff you saw in the video was kind of creepy.
How does this relate to Shirt Storm?
Well, Shirt Storm, my opinion is that it's that is ridiculous.
How feminists are upset about.
And it's
So-called
you
feminists.
right. You paint with a broad brush. Who knows who these?
Who actually is upset with it? Like,
Well,
other than
this originally,
I mean,
it started on Twitter, and so this is a whole other topic. Is like how Twitter kind of escalates everything very quickly and turns it into like these two warring factions, and it's really maybe just these like French people who now have a loud microphone to speak with through Twitter. But she's a journalist, but she calls herself a scientist. She's the one that brought it up first from The Atlantic. I don't remember her name. She made a snide comment towards him, which I think is fine on Twitter, but then it went from there to all these people started just like piling on and talking about how horrible he was for doing that and like keeping women out of the sciences and how it's like a slight on their profession.
His shirt is the embodiment of the glass ceiling in the sciences.
Right. And when I think of it, like, I don't expect the smart geeks, at least from what I've seen from Michael Bay movies, to be dressed in suits and ties. They usually are quite charismatic. I don't know.
Well,
eccentric would be
eccentric. Yeah, I mean the other
tattoos and the shirt. I think it's great. That's a cool thing. It's individualistic.
Well, what really set this, what really made this big though was the following day, because he's with a group of 4 of the scientists the following day, and there's a camera on him. And he's being asked about what happened, and he breaks down and starts crying on camera.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's what really made this. So the issue to me was, okay, whether or not this guy should be wearing that shirt in that context. I mean, it is kind of jarring to see, like, oh, the scientist, here comes the scientist, he comes out with this tattoo shirt with those scantily clad women. But yeah, he's a science dork. I mean, he is going to be weird and kind of inappropriate or socially awkward. And he was kind of shamed at that. He was shamed, and it kind of the story became the shirt the guy was wearing, not the fact that we were able to land.
Right.
Humankind was able to land this tiny,
huge scientific accomplishment has been completely overshadowed because of
on this tiny little comet. I mean, it's not a very big comet.
Right.
300 million miles away.
No, I you know.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to Amir. Did you know who when I graduated from USC, who my graduation speaker was?
Your graduation speaker was.
This is 1998.
This is when you had just gotten your newly minted women's studies minor.
Yes, and I was actually
Rape
pursuing
culture UVA.
I was initially thinking of going into, joining the women's lib movement.
Okay.
And
I think you maybe were 30 years too late, but
when I realized that, I changed direction and entered the.
Well, you would have really appreciated my graduation speaker then, Bill Cosby.
Papa
So
Cosby.
can you do a Cosby impersonation?
I fear that it would come across as
racist
somehow. Yeah.
oh, racist. Hey.
No. Come on, put some gusto into
Yeah.
it.
Well, look,
Hey! It's Fat Albert.
I was thinking more of like a chocolate cake.
You were thinking
reference or
the
something.
pudding pops.
No.
Pudding.
Chocolate cake.
No, what is he, British? No. He did the
all of Doug's impersonations are British now.
pudding pop. What did he do? The pudding thing?
Pudding. He's the Jello spokesman.
Jello.
But
No,
pudding,
pudding.
Jello
Pudding
is
pops.
good to go. Jello,
That's
yeah.
pretty good.
Okay, thanks.
So we're in the midst of the Cosby storm as well. So he's now been in the last. Well, what happened? This actually all started about 10 years ago. A woman had actually brought a civil suit against him, saying that he had raped her. The DA in that case did not press charges, even though she had come to the DA. She waited a year to go to the DA. Now this is one of those really, really tricky situations because
I'm just curious. I'm curious about one thing. If this was on his shirt,
the Venus de Milo,
well, it's Venus, the birth of Venus.
the birth of Venus.
Venus de Milo.
Are you bringing us back to shirt storm?
I'm just, if what he had on his shirt was art.
It's extremely
in some
subjective.
circles was
It's a
art.
subjective.
I mean, it embraced the beauty of the female form, and just like Botticelli's Birth of Venus. And I think that if this were on his shirt, would that still? I mean, would we say, wow, he is he is exalting the female form.
I don't think I would say it in either case, but
I just don't know. To me, that
Botticelli in his
should
time.
we take this painting down because it kind of
There's too much skin.
Didn't the Atlantic writers at the time, the feminist writers for the Atlantic, object to Botticelli as well? They say
I
that
think they had a follow-up piece on.
that's why like all the fig leaves came out.
I'm sure there was an op-ed piece.
It's interesting now that the feminist movement and the far Christian right have basically aligned themselves on what's allowed as far as the amount of skin that can be shown.
Look, all I know is I gotta find this guy's rant because
Okay, well, can we move on to our friend Bill Cosby?
no, go on, please. He's our friend.
Has never worn a shirt with scantily clad women.
Right, he's always sweaters, very appropriate.
He keeps
family
all
man.
of his inappropriate interactions towards women
Well,
private.
who has come forward so far?
A number of women.
Only 16 women.
All
Which
right.
is that's a
decent number.
That's a good amount.
And if you look at the women who've come forward, for the most part,
How many women came forward with Anthony Weiner?
like, yeah, not. Oh, no, they had.
How many came
that's
forward
spoken-
with
they're
Bill
spoken
Clinton?
proof.
How many came forward with?
Cosby was smart. He did not text his penis to anybody. Let that be a lesson to you with your Tinder
Even before Weiner.
And your rape culture.
and your rape culture.
Even before Weiner, there was Clinton who didn't tweet or text or
Yeah, I mean,
text or do anything.
Clinton is actually a good example, right?
Clinton
Because
is a great
there is a woman, I think it's Juanita Broderick, who claimed that Clinton raped her.
There's a couple women that claimed.
I don't know. Did they claim they raped her?
Juanita
or
Broderick
sexually harassed
said
him?
he raped her. Kathleen Willey said he groped her.
Right.
So now under the new definitions of sexual assault on campuses, I think both would qualify. But
Right. I mean, I guess depending on what point you are in time, sexual harassment might be considered rape. Whereas,
yeah,
30 years ago, I think you actually had to rape somebody. Whereas now, we might be getting towards the point where
if you just put your hand on their breast without asking, which is what Bill Clinton was supposed to have done to
Right.
Kathleen Willey.
an accidental brush on the subway is now
Right.
You know,
And then there was
police
Paula Jones, who basically I'm sure he probably did this to hundreds of women, which was he would take them into a room and like kind of pull his pants down and be like, let's get going.
I don't think he thought he was doing anything inappropriate.
I don't think he obviously did. He did it at times.
Right.
And
That's why he was so surprised when people came like.
Who is it? Who?
about
Clarence Thomas?
No. Bill Clinton.
I'm sorry. Did not Clarence Thomas also get accused by
He
Anita
got
Hill?
accused of sexual harassment, basically
And
making
the real kind
comments.
of sexual harassment.
Yeah, making comments
Like
about pubic
actual
hairs.
touching,
Yeah, just
yeah.
no touching, just all.
He didn't accidentally brush up on
Yeah.
against the woman on the subway. He actually.
Oh my gosh! Brushing up on a woman in the subway?
Yes, that is now.
You just
sexual
said
harassment.
accidentally.
Accidentally.
How
Well,
can
it's-
accidentally?
It's hard to describe, to infer intent, right? To figure out whether or not.
So when I'm on the 4-5 and it's crowded in
I would
like,
say
Get on the 6 train.
Get in between
the
a
6
bunch of
train.
men.
I have to get on the 6 train to avoid rubbing up
stand
against
in
any.
between a bunch of men and you'll be fine,
Okay.
unless they feel that you are sexually harassing them. which
Anybody can feel I'm harassing them. I
you
have that.
You have a sexual presence.
I have this
Raw
aura
energy.
of
Yeah.
harassability.
Yeah.
If
That's
that's
true.
a word.
So in the case of let's go back to Bill Cosby. So this all started about 10 years ago. So far, about 16 women come forward. Now, as many as 12 apparently were out there 10 years ago because the complaint the one filed 10 years ago mentioned had 12 other women. Most of them were identified as Jane Does, but they were around. And they're all, the MO on every single one of them is pretty much the same, which is date rape. Excuse me, not date rape. Drugged.
Right.
Drugged, like a roofie. And then you have, there's these comedy routines stand-up routines from the 60s that Cosby did, where he's talking about Spanish fly. Now, when I grew up, I thought Spanish fly just made women horny. But what Cosby refers to in his stand-up routine is Spanish fly essentially being a roofie, like drugging them.
Right.
And it was like a joke in the stand-up routine. So, I mean, it looks pretty bad. It's hard to imagine. It'd be one thing if this was like a 1-off, a 2-off, even a 3-off, but 16 different women claiming to have been roofied.
What,
Drugged.
And what are the time periods that he did this?
I think this is really, it actually goes back to the 70s, maybe even earlier, but it's as recently as like 2004, 2005.
So women kind of withhold this information for 30 years.
Yeah.
And then what prompts them to suddenly come?
Well, what happened in this case is there was a comic who started to incorporate these rape charges into his routine in the last year or so. His name is Burwell or Burris. I'll have to look on that. But he's a fairly popular comic now, black comic actually, who I just has a thing for Cosby, doesn't like him. And now this also ties back to another thing with Cosby, which is the funny thing about Cosby, and I don't know if you guys remember this, is in the 80s in particular, he had this reputation for going to other comics, dirty comics, and telling them to stop, to get all the vulgarity.
Yeah.
Like Eddie Murphy made
Profanity.
a big deal about it. I think even Richard Pryor had talked about it.
Right.
Sarah Silverman just came out, and I think she tweeted, Bill Cosby told me that I was too dirty in my routine. I didn't know he was talking about my asshole. But so this was like his thing. He would go to other comics, and so I can't even
Burris.
Burris.
Hannibal Burris.
Hannibal Burris. So, and he talks about this in his routine. And then so the woman who actually sued him 10 years ago, he settled with her. Hannibal Burris was talking about, and back 10 years ago, another woman.
It was settled 10 years ago.
Yes. And then about a year later.
I'd never heard of the
Right.
rape
It was really below the surface.
It's impressive.
A woman had gone on the Today Show 10 years ago and talked about it, but it was like that was it. And the media didn't cover it. I mean, it was on the Today Show, and that was it.
It was whitewashed.
It was, Cosby washed.
Cosby washed. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good PR.
Yeah, it's the media. It's kind of interesting the way the media works, because I would say 95% of what we call the mainstream media will only cover things if other people in the media have already covered them.
Right.
So if you want to, especially with someone who's like popular and powerful like Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby is like he's kind of a unique figure, right?
Because he's like this
very beloved figure,
patriarchal,
yes.
like kind of elevated to some kind of status of you can't really
touch him.
smear his
right.
name.
When it had come out about 15 years ago that he had a kid out of wedlock.
Jeez.
While he was married to somebody else, and I mean it was in the media, but it kind of like everyone just like, oh well, okay, that's fine, that's it happens. In this case, what was also going on is he was supposed to have like a new sitcom on NBC. They have now pulled that. He was supposed to have a new comedy special. They've pulled that, but the state buried for many years, and. Yeah, and the women, it's one of these things, like how you get women to, this is maybe something covered when we talk about the, your alma mater's rape accusation. Yeah. I mean, I think there's got to be better ways for reporting these things. Because you do need to, I mean, look, there is a chance he is innocent. I don't really believe that, but I think there's a chance.
My question is, why did Bill Cosby feel the need to have to rape somebody when I'm sure there's women throwing, even as little as 10 years ago, when he was old Cosby, women I'm sure were still throwing themselves at him.
Right. Well, if you look at these women who are accusing him, there's similarity, which is they're all white. They're all very attractive, especially when they were younger. I don't know, maybe he could have, maybe he just
He's
felt
also
like,
a very rich man.
he was a very rich man.
He could, utilize some of the underground services that are available to men that like specific women.
Right, but if you, I mean, is it better, for the way he's thinking, is it better to have sex with a prostitute or have sex with a kind of pristine young white woman who
I have to drug?
Yeah. If you're a sexual predator, I think the answer to that question is pretty easy.
I was, in researching this a little bit more, I came across something on Twitter which was put forth by none other than Larry the Cable Guy, who I'm sure, as you both know, I'm quite a fan of.
Get it
given
done.
my disdain for Americana. But he put forth a good point. He said, what's the difference between Bill Cosby and Bill Clinton? Like why is NBC pulling the show? Why did Netflix pull the comedy special of Bill Cosby? And Bill Clinton seems to have gotten away with all of his behavior and probably still practices his behavior.
Right. Oh, I guess the question is, how many women did Bill Clinton actually rape?
I mean, how many women do you have to rape to
Well, I don't,
get in
I
trouble?
don't know if Bill
I think it
Clinton-
depends. It depends who you are.
I
I
don't know if
mean,
Bill Clinton.
I would personally.
Juanita Broaddrick accused him of rape.
Right.
If I were in charge of the court of public opinion, I would probably give Bill Cosby more leeway to rape women than Bill Clinton. But it seems I'm in the minority.
Well, let's put it this way: if a woman had come forward tomorrow and said, "Justin Bieber raped me," I have a feeling the media would cover that story pretty aggressively.
Right, because everybody hates Bieber. But
Right.
nobody hated Bill Cosby.
No, that's right. That's why it took 16. It took six. It basically, it's this special.
So what you're saying is enough women haven't come out to accuse Bill Clinton of rape yet.
Yes.
But the number is probably lower, like somewhere around 8.
Well,
Half of
or
them
maybe,
have.
who knows? It's hard to say. Who knows? I mean, he's certainly done inappropriate things with him. Let's say groping, inappropriate touching.
Well, I think there's also a difference between accusations, aimed at political.
Do you think it's because Clinton was our first black
Figures.
president that?
Well, I just think then you take celebrities, who have their own category, and those stories, they ramp out pretty quickly because
But Bill Clinton was a celebrity too. I mean, I'm not sure there's a.
he was nothing but a celebrity.
I don't know if there's a major.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a major difference. I mean, the one difference was that he was the actual president of the United States at the time, which maybe does matter because the press doesn't want to be reporting these salacious
Did Bill Cosby
accusations.
ever play president?
Not that I
no,
know.
you're
That's the
confusing.
Chris
there
Rock.
have been again
No,
wrong.
Chris Rock did in the movie. He was elected president.
He was elected president.
Elected, but
Just because I am of a Northern European background doesn't mean I think all black
no,
people
but
look
it
the
goes
same.
with the whole the fact that Morgan Freeman is always plays the
black
president.
president.
Yeah, in Independence Day. didn't he?
Danny Glover played a
No,
black
it was
president.
Bill Pullman in Independence Day.
Yeah.
Danny Glover. in
Okay,
2012, he was
right.
a black president.
Not as memorable as of a movie.
No.
Who was the
Well, it's
president
sad
in
ending.
24?
The Allstate insurance guy.
And his brother later on was also black.
Right.
And who was the president in? I don't know. There was another movie.
So it seems to me there's just real angst against Bill Cosby, because he was never allowed to play a black president.
That's why all these women are coming forward now.
Right. Just he played Ghost.
Well, Bill Cosby never
Doctor.
played against.
Isn't
He was a spy. He was
He never
a
put-
spy. Remember?
A spy?
I spy.
Yeah, but Bill Cosby never played against type. He never played. I mean, he was a
Didn't.
very
Correct me if I'm wrong, but in
one-dimensional.
the Cosby Show, the original Cosby Show on NBC, or the most popular one, wasn't he in the same profession that you were in?
no. He was not. He was an obstetrician.
And you
Well, I
were-
mean, the same industry, or the same. He had the same.
No,
degree.
I got it.
The same degree.
He was a
Yeah,
medical
yeah,
doctor.
yeah. So what's your point?
Oh, I think this is very interesting when we go into our Tinder discussion later on, all the similarities between some of these people we've been talking about.
And me.
And you.
Okay, so we're never going to get to the
Painting a
Tinder
picture of me with. People are gonna have some
This is your.
preconceived idea
Okay, so this
of me.
Well, maybe
Based
maybe
on-
well informed. Maybe well informed. Yes.
Well informed. It's coming from the two of you.
Okay, so let's move on to something I actually do want to talk about, which I've been thinking about, which is this podcast that you turned me on to. Just briefly describe the podcast for us.
All right. So the idea was
What's the name of the podcast?
it's called Serial, and that's spelled Serial, not like the food. And Serial is, harkens back to the days when stories were released in,
In serial.
in serial fashion in a newspaper or a magazine. And what it does is it follows the story of a actual event that took place in 1999, the murder of a high school student at the time. She was an Asian student, and her,
Although, it's not entirely clear
if she's Asian.
from the podcast that she's actually Asian. They don't say she's Asian, I don't think.
Why do you think
Hey.
she's Asian?
Of course she's
Well,
Asian.
she is.
Of course
Her
she
name
is.
Her name is Hae Lee.
No, the whole family, the whole culture. I mean,
do they talk about? I mean, she's
yes.
Korean. How much do they talk about her side?
no, but they explain that he came from. So
They talk about a lot about his background.
The main character, character that they're following is a guy named Anand
Anand
Syed, who was accused of
and convicted.
and convicted of murdering the girl he had been dating for 8 months, and then they broke up, and then he was accused of murdering her on one day in January, and what happened is, this is, we're talking about 15 years later, one of the producers of This American Life, which is a show on NPR, hosted by Ira Glass, who also is, I guess he's the...
He's a producer, at least, or something.
He's like an editorial consultant or something, and so they decided to follow the course of this, the investigation and do studies of each of the characters that were involved, at the time, and to kind of create this, recreate the events of that.
Now, the host
surrounding
of the
whole
show,
event.
whose name is
Sarah Koenig.
Koenig.
Well, maybe we need to learn how to pronounce
It's Koenig, right? Sarah Koenig.
It's either Koenig or Koenig.
Is that Dutch?
It's
Danish?
not Boner, it's Boehner.
Okay, so anyway, this Sarah, I think, was brought into this by a friend of Saeed's family named...
Who sent her a letter?
Right, Rabbi Chudre or something like that.
She was a rabbi?
No, she's not a rabbi. She's Pakistani.
Okay.
But she's a lawyer in the...
She's like a immigrant lawyer? Or immigration? Or
I think she works in some federal department
Yeah.
still. But it's a respected job. So this is like the points I wanted to. This is captivated. I mean, this has become the most downloaded podcast in history. Amir, you turned it on to me. I didn't really know anything about it, and all of a sudden I found out about it. It is very captivating.
Yeah, it's funny you bring it up, and people have actually, yesterday I was speaking to somebody, and they had been listening to it. They listened to all 9 episodes.
It's in numbers towards some of the premium cable shows.
Right, something
The
like
same
that.
number of people,
Right.
like Game of Thrones and
Right.
Breaking Bad.
Right, and it has. I mean,
5 million. So that's
impressive.
speaking of one of your favorite words, Doug, penetration. It has penetrated into things like
Into the market.
into like
Well,
Slate.
Isn't this just a
Once it's been thrust into the limelight.
Isn't this just a continuation, like a very cheap way to continue the popularity of shows like The Killing and True Crime? What's
True,
that?
No.
True
Detective.
Detective.
True
So let
Detective.
me.
No, this is more along the lines of Dateline.
Well, here's the thing. It is very much like Dateline and 48 Hours.
Yeah.
40 Dateline and 48 Hours mysteries, which I've gotten more addicted to. I have to kind of admit, cringingly.
Yeah, we're trying to cut you back on those.
Okay, so what I found interesting was, because I've watched, at this point in my life, I've probably seen like 500 of these Dateline and 48-hour mysteries. Sarah Koenig does a really great job of the way she approaches this, because she's, of course, she's basically kind of a reporter. Has no background in police detective work. I don't think she even worked the crime beat as a reporter before. She's kind of just coming to this as like a normal person, using logic and the skills that she's learned and what God gave her. And I was wondering, when the way this started, I was thinking there were two possibilities of the way that she would approach this, which was, one, this is a case of a clearly innocent guy, Anand Syed, who's been in prison. One of the other I should mention really quickly, one of the other fascinating things about the show is she actually has tape records conversations with a lot of the key people, including Anand calling her from prison. And the calls would get cut off because that's the way the prison phone works. But he's on the line, and she talks about her own personal biases and how she finds him very charming, and it's difficult for her to believe that he could pull this off. However, she's not a lemming, and I was worried that that this would be a case of like, this guy's clearly innocent, this is such a miscarriage of justice, and the whole point of the show will be just to exonerate this guy. Or number two, she just approaches this completely like naive tree hugger that, doesn't understand how these things work. One of the reasons I wanted to talk about it was, especially having watched a lot of these Dateline and 48 Hour things, I'm very much a skeptic of prosecutors. I think prosecutors abuse their power all the time.
Right.
You see like these Dateline and 48 Hour episodes and the way they present the cases, it's like, I mean, how a jury reaches the determination that people are guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. I mean, I'm a lawyer, so I take that standard seriously. But they find these people guilty beyond a reasonable doubt really on very scant evidence, and it just, a lot of times it's like, oh, the husband or the ex-husband, and oh, I guess, of course he did it, who else would have done it? I mean, it's kind of people just applying common sense logic, and I think they're usually right, but people have been, like later on it turned out, no, it was a serial killer who came in and killed him.
Wasn't a lot of, the prosecutor is kind of, not only are they, dealing with facts, but they're also really kind of,
telling a narrative.
No, they have to be very good raconteurs. They have to tell a good story and spin it.
Well, that's what it is.
And pull emotional strings. And once you got somebody emotionally, prejudice somebody against somebody on an emotional basis, done.
Right, and she starts out, Sarah Koenig starts out in discussing this about really playing up how the prosecutors talked about
his Muslim background.
Now, we have to say, this is a prosecution, it's a murder and a prosecution that took place before 9/11. So the feelings toward Muslims were different back then.
Right.
They certainly weren't as calcified as they are now. But they did play up this idea that he had betrayed his cultural heritage, his family, his religion, and the fact that she had broken up with him had just destroyed his world and all these things, which just seemed not entirely clear from the evidence. However, a lot's been coming out recently about Sarah Koenig's skepticism in her approach to this case, because she's really looking at this. I think she's trying to find out if this guy's guilty or not. She's not sure. And the woman and the family members of Syed who originally brought her in, I think are getting pretty upset with her because they're starting to subtly accusing her of racism.
I think maybe they misunderstood the point of the project. The point of the project was not to exonerate Anand. The point of the project was to follow the course of this story and balance both sides, give weight to both sides. Her job wasn't to show the prosecution's case or the defense was incompetent, which is mentioned.
Right. Although then in later episodes they start playing some of the cross-examination the defense did, and it didn't sound as competent as the family members presented as.
But maybe up front the family wasn't aware of what the intent of this.
That's very possible.
Kind of experiment.
Well, of course, then they don't want him. They have a family member stuck in prison. They want him out, and they think that she could do this. One of the reasons I want to talk about this was because I've watched so many of these 48 Hours and these Dateline episodes, and having seen so many guys, I think men and women convicted, mainly men, I was like very skeptical of. This case does not seem that close to me. I'm kind of it's still a very fascinating show, but it doesn't seem to me like there's a great case for exoneration, and the idea that this guy was convicted is not all that shocking to me, and it's certainly not this major miscarriage of justice, notwithstanding how much his Muslim heritage was brought up by the prosecution. So I'm just going to lay out, because Doug doesn't really know the facts here.
So are you saying that Koenig could have picked a better story?
Yes. Well, certainly if she was looking for a close case or this is still a tricky case, but if she's looking for a close case, this is not the case to go with. I mean, she's done a wonderful job in presenting it, but the case itself. So I'm going to lay out the facts, because Doug is not as familiar with the facts. So just very briefly, the case against the person. So we have a 17 or 18-year-old senior in high school, female, who was murdered. She went missing on a Wednesday in January of her senior year. She was found 6 weeks later in a shallow grave. The her car remained missing. The police got an anonymous tip to look at her ex-boyfriend, and to look at her ex-boyfriend's friend as well. The essentially pot-smoking buddy of the ex-boyfriend took the police to the location of the car where they had left the car. And then then he goes on to implicate the ex-boyfriend in the murder. This is Anand Syed. So no one had any idea where this car was until the pot-smoking buddy of the ex-boyfriend tells the police exactly where the car was located. This is the victim's car, which she disappeared with. On the day of because we also have cell phone records from the day that she went missing. The day that she went missing, the person who was convicted, the ex-boyfriend, gave his cell phone and his car to his pot-smoking buddy for several hours, and then right around an hour after school was let out, around the time she went missing, he retrieved his phone, and we know this because a phone call was placed around an hour after school was let out to someone that only the ex-boyfriend was friends with, not the pot-smoking buddy. So the call log on the cell phone went from talking, it was like all the friends of the pot-smoking buddy, to the friends of the actual owner of the cell phone, the ex-boyfriend.
Correct.
Right about the time that everyone kind of agrees she probably was murdered.
And the time that Anand, the guy who is the victim, claims he was at school and not, anywhere near where they claim storyline that they claim that the pot smoking friend.
So now, even if the pot smoking buddy had not implicated the ex-boyfriend in the actual commission of the crime, which he does, he says he didn't.
Well, the whole case hinges on his testimony.
Well, but even if they didn't have his testimony, and this is my argument, even if they didn't have his testimony, all they had was him going to the police and him showing the police where this murdered girl's car had been located for 2 months. The police couldn't find it. It was in some crack row in Baltimore. The fact that he had that information means he had special information that nobody else had. Then you start to look around, well, who does he know that has any sort of nexus with the victim? And he happens to be the pot-smoking buddy of the ex-boyfriend.
Right.
So, just on that, even if he didn't implicate Anand, I think you almost could get a conviction. Just
really,
Anand doesn't have it. He doesn't have I know there's this.
But isn't that circumstantial? I mean,
well,
if all that you had
a lot of evidence. Look, there's no direct evidence in this case. We should say that there's no, except the only direct evidence is the actual testimony of this pot-smoking buddy claims to have seen the dead body in the car that Anand shows him, but there's no DNA, there's no blood.
There is on a
palm print on the
right.
Anand never gave testimony that he.
He did. He claimed that he was in the library.
Well, he didn't testify. So this didn't come. He claimed,
but he never gave a confession.
No,
there's no issue like that.
No, there's no confession.
He
denies
but here's the circumstance. Okay, we have a high school senior. By the way, I should also say, because I didn't say this, the method of them. She wasn't shot in a drug shootout. She was strangled by somebody's hands.
Right.
So somebody strangled her with his hands. So somebody strangled this girl after school and buried her in a shallow grave. And
two other factors. Apparently, it was premeditated. They're claiming.
Well, or maybe it was, or maybe it wasn't.
Well, that he had said, "I'm going to kill her."
They claimed
so he knew in advance. It wasn't in the moment.
Well, there's two. Right. That's true. He was
planning on going and finding her car, getting in her car, killing her, and then, well, I don't know if he had a plan of how to dispose of the body, but the body was found in this area, this park that people only go to bury bodies.
Yeah, that's a whole other story about Baltimore, but. The main point to me, because the case for premeditation, I think it was premeditated, and I think there's good evidence of that, but the case for premeditation is not as strong as the case that just Anand did it. Someone murdered her. Someone and not just murdered her,
and they could
strangled her.
That's a very personal thing, right?
Very personal thing. And she was not sexually assaulted. So this was not a sexual predator. It was someone who was very angry at her, killed her, and buried her in a shallow grave. The person who knew where her car was and where her body was buried as well, because he also knew this, just happened to be the guy's pocketbooking buddy who he lent his car to and his cell phone to on that day.
Right. But so did Coney or any of the prosecutors, the police, they didn't go to any of the friends in the high school and
In fact, that's one of the great parts about the show is they have all this testimony.
They did.
But so are there
corroborating
stories about
Yes.
like fights or issues between the
That's
couple?
that's really hard to. There's conflicting testimony about whether or not they're fighting. One of the things that I thought was strange is, or at least it didn't look good for Anon, is there was so they had this relationship. It was 8 months. I think it was pretty passionate because they were having sex everywhere for 8 months. It was in high school.
In the park where she was found as well.
Not with. There was rumor. There's actually stories of that too.
Really?
Yes.
Oh.
This is a good.
Isn't Jay the one who claims that they had sex in that park?
I think somebody else.
Other people?
Yeah.
I do think we should get maybe some royalties from PBS. Or
I think
NPR
it's already been
for
promoted.
us talking about this
Probably.
so much.
Yeah.
But there is this they did have this passionate relationship. She broke it off with him and started dating somebody else.
As girls are wont to do.
In high
That's
school.
a weird nose.
Okay, so even after they broke up, he was still like hanging out with her, but not like
As friends.
As friends.
He claimed they were still friends.
We're just friends. It was mutual.
Right.
Yeah.
So, the one thing I have to say about it, I certainly had my heart broken, and the last thing I wanted to do was hang out with that person in a way where she was like dating somebody else.
Right. I'm sure that would wear at a guy.
There's a situation that's described here.
I love how you speak so hypothetically, like it's never happened that your heart has been broken and.
I do all the heartbreaking. You know that.
Okay.
So this is one event, or it's a very minor thing, where she had like her car broken down or something, or she had a flat tire.
Right.
This is the victim, Hay, and she called not only her new boyfriend but also Anon, and they both came.
Do you think it was a race to see who could get there faster?
Well,
Who loves me more?
whatever the case, I mean, apparently he went, and I just know that when the passions run high, the last thing you want to be in a situation is where the new boyfriend's there and you're still in love with this girl.
Not obviously. I'm not.
I'm thinking. My point is, to me, it implies an obsession on his part.
Obsession on his part and very poor judgment on her part.
Yes, well, obviously. Are you saying she asked for it?
I don't think.
Amir, shouldn't you be asking Doug if he was saying that? No.
Doug, where were you in January in 1999? Actually,
I think
I just started college, so or I guess maybe it was my second year.
99.
99, yeah. January 99, first year, second semester.
So you're winning an NAIA national championship.
I was not running yet. No.
I was in medical school.
You were in medical school using your women's studies minor.
Yeah, to be sensitive to my fellow.
Use your bedside manner,
Female.
quick bedside manner with the females. All right. Well, I think that sounds like a great story.
So anyway, the only point I wanted to make about that show is, I mean, I think it's very well done. However, I do think that to me, the guy's case for innocence is extremely weak. Or like, at least he's involved. I mean, how could he not be involved?
Well, I'm curious, and I don't know how she structured the whole program. If she set out, she shot all the episodes and then edited them.
I'm assuming she had. Do you know if it's 12 episodes? How many 12?
It's 12. It's going to be 12.
So the 9th just came out today or
Right.
yesterday.
So it's going to be a total of 12. And the question is, she had no idea where it was going to go at the outset.
I'm sure, but
It could have been a dud of a story.
But she had done right. That's absolutely true. But she had done all the legwork for a year before she actually did the podcast. Unlike our podcast, where we're doing all the legwork as we actually.
on the
very
fly, by the seat of our pants.
I like to say extemporaneous, but I don't
Is
know.
that your word of the day?
I don't know if Doug would understand. So
Well, I
I'll
have my
just.
handy dandy Google here. So we don't know how it's going to end. It could end up with him exonerated.
It could.
Or this
Well, we
radio
know-
show.
well, we
and they
know
could make a
he's
movie in
still
10 years about it, just like the hurricane.
Yes. And Bob Dylan could sing a song.
Bob
Because
Dylan,
he's still alive.
Bob Dylan's still alive and could sing a song about this. So, since I haven't watched it, I did do a bit of research, and unfortunately, we could probably talk about this another time, but all of it was criticism on how Sarah Koenig is white
Yes,
and
that is a big thing.
people in the
That's what you
story
said.
are minorities, and this is another
Well,
instance
that's
of white
now,
privilege.
that is the kind of
The meme.
the meme, the flashback, the
Blowback?
blowback from it not going in his favor.
Yes.
No, because
No, if she was like like this guy's innocent, and
Then she'd be like a.
she's not liberal enough,
Right.
progressive enough.
So essentially, the thinking is because she's white, she gets access to people
Oh,
that
okay.
say somebody of Muslim or ethnicity would not. People wouldn't have talked.
we should say too. It is a strange because it's a magnet school in the near suburbs of Baltimore, Magnet High School, where all the main people were going to the same school. It's completely mixed race of everything. You have
Well,
the
I
victim
think it's
is
actually primarily African American.
it's mainly black.
Right.
But there was, I think the friend Jay. So I don't want to get. There's at least one white girl involved.
Jen.
Yeah. But yeah, it's mainly black, but it's mixed.
She
But
was never a suspect?
Jen, well,
None of the women were ever suspects. There were literally 3 suspects.
I mean, a good way to...
Jay or Anand, Ron,
The guy-
Don, her other boyfriend.
although he had
he had an alibi,
an ironclad alibi.
and some guy,
Well, there was
Mr. S.
The streaker.
Was Don White her other boyfriend?
Yes.
Oh, well,
Is he white? I don't know if that's confirmed.
Oh no, good point. I don't know if he was.
not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's confirmed.
So I thought you meant was his name Don White.
Was it?
She doesn't give last names of anyone.
So we have about 2 minutes left, right?
Yeah.
We're usually doing an hour, 1 hour.
I think
Do we have enough time just to briefly get into Amir's most recent tender? I think maybe we can make this...
I think we should talk about Amir and his Tinder thing another time. But maybe we can just wrap up last night. Last
night.
You want me to get the
We'd like
facts
to-
on a recording?
An
so that
an apology for us
Oh,
locating...
regarding
So,
that.
there's a certain
All right,
part-
let me
so let me-
explain.
let me-
Let me explain what happened.
Okay.
All right.
Does
So-
any of these explanations involve why you didn't text message us?
That's actually
You
all
have,
of
you have
the
1 minute and 45 seconds to do.
The
get
point
your story
being that I was, I didn't know when I was gonna get on the train to come down here.
out. But the trains all run on a schedule, right?
They do, so I didn't get on a train till 5:40, which means I don't get in till 10, which means I don't know what, I have all my stuff with me, and you guys are like, just come and bring your stuff. And it's like, really? Really? Because I'm bringing a suitcase and a backpack, and you want me to just come
You
to
had
a
said
bar?
duffel bag.
A
You said
sports
duffel
bar,
bag.
right? It was a sports bar.
No, it was no.
It was half empty. It would have been nice
It
to
was
see.
I'd say mostly empty. We wanted to have one drink with you, and then I was going to go home anyway, which is what I did.
See, but you were ready to go home at 10.
I would have stayed out later.
Right.
I think the point of this all is your
How do you
communication
do this?
efforts have to increase so we can all
Just-
get on the
I
same
felt like
page.
we were.
There was no.
All
there
you
was
have
not
to
the
do
problem.
is say, text us and say, guys, I appreciate it, but I need to do X. I'm not coming.
I fear sometimes, and I'll tell you, this is a problem that permeates many of my.
throw mute and all me.
I'm afraid of that. Like, Amir, why aren't you prioritizing us over these little?
We're your friends, so we never do that to you. But
But
No, you killed me.
You know what your punishment is going to have to be. So Doug and I don't want to say this person famous, but there was a person we had to spend like an inordinate amount of time with last night
Well,
waiting for
let's
you.
just give him a name. Let's call him, I don't know,
Lenny. Let's call him Lenny.
Lenny.
So Lenny,
Well, why were you with Lenny in the first place?
it was a joint event.
I didn't realize there was an event.
Well, there's a basketball game, but anyway, we can talk about that.
so
later.
the point is, I think as punishment, you're going to have to spend like 3 hours with Lenny.
Yes.
I did spend
Well,
A
3
lot.
hours.
No, but you've done. You
Time.
spent time with Lenny by choice for some reason, which I still can't figure out. We had to spend time with Lenny not by choice, waiting for you, under false pretenses.
Right.
I see. So
We
you,
want to
you
spend
didn't
the
know
time
he was
with
going to
him.
be there.
No, actually, we did not.
We did not until it was too late.
It's too
Was he
late.
there with his fiance?
No.
No.
Now you're getting too close to
But
exposing.
his fiance Bonita.
Lenny,
You're exposing
fiance.
Lenny. Anyway, so we're at the 1 hour now.
Okay, so so this was our first podcast.
I think it went relatively well. We have a few crickets to work through. Was it not crickets?
Quirks,
Quirks,
Crickets and quirks.
crinkles.
Crinkles and wrinkles.
crinkles.
And we'll have our fourth on, and then our rotating fifth at some point, which will be great. So I think we only have this direction to go up.
Yeah, we started, we wanted to just start with a baseline and just to,
The good thing is we set the
get a
bar
sense
low.
of
This
who
is
we
like
are.
this is the pilot episode of South Park.
I think what this does is
This is like Jesus versus Santa Claus.
Jesus versus
it gives, right there in that statement, you get a sense of the personalities at the table. It's these two guys who would somehow compare this to Jesus and who?
Santa Claus.
And Santa Claus.
Maybe
Two
right?
people you don't
You,
believe
you
in.
might have heard of.
We're gonna have to, next episode, we will get into, Doug and I, while we're very close friends, we've had some differences in our
Morals.
moral and
Whereas I'm like Gandhi and you're like Stalin.
worldviews. Kind of, this show will be getting more edgy as we go along,
Great.
and we're gonna express our
Maybe some exposure.
opinion, and it's not gonna be pretty all the time,
Okay, well, so for Amir,
and amicable like it's been today.
and Doug, we're gonna sign off. We'll see you next time.
We'll see you
Bye.
next, thank you.
That's pretty good. I was worried.
I think I did it again.